Sebelum diteruskan, sila like, komen, subscribe, share. Anda akan dapat mengikuti video kami yang terbaru nanti. Sekian, terima kasih.
Anuar Ibrahim, Prime Minister of Malaysia, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Haslinda Amin.
Prime Minister Anuar Ibrahim has been in power for 18 months, and in that time, he's managed to bring stability to his government, much to the surprise of the naysayers. It is, after all, an alliance which includes foes turned allies. Prime Minister Anuar Ibrahim, it's good to see you again.
Thank you, Haslinda.
Before we get to the crux of the conversation, I'd like to address the elephant in the room, a Bloomberg report which prompted a robust response from you. And it's hurt relations somewhat, so I just want to get it out there so that we can move on. The Bloomberg report said that you held early stage discussions for a casino in Forest City, and you said they were lies. So, Prime Minister, there were no discussions, no meeting that happened, and linked to that, would your government consider a second casino in the country, or would you adopt a no casino policy under your administration?
Affirmative, no. There's no necessity for Malaysia to venture into casino business. We are focusing on digital transformation, energy transition, AI, and we believe that this is adequate to push the country forward. Now, the complication with the casino was that nobody actually referred to us to check the facts and the veracity of the information. And number two, it complicates because the king's name was somewhat implicated or insinuated. And in our system, although it's a constitutional monarchy, the person monarchy highly respected, regarded, and it's grossly unfair, not only for you, but then abused by some other members of the opposition to say that the Prime Minister and the King is in cohort trying to open up a new casino. And that was why I took a very strong position, because it is again manifestly unjust to drag the name of the King, because the King is not a politician. They are not at liberty to respond. And the system of the royal members is that the paraphernalia must be respected, how we address them, and the fact that they are accorded with dignity and respect. That was why I took that. But nobody was arrested or the media was banned. They were just in the process asking questions, and I think we move on.
We move on, just to be sure, to put it out there, no casino under your administration. Let's talk about the economy. Almost 2 years on, is the Malaysian economy where you thought it would be? Because when you speak to some investors, they say, they've been pretty frustrated because of the slow rollout in your reforms. They point perhaps to the slowness, the delay in cutting fuel subsidies, which would add to the coffers, improve your fiscal position. Your response to that?
Well, we have undertaken these stringent measures. I've inherited a system where we have 1.5 trillion debt deficit for 5.6. Now, of course, I have to deal with this. Now, an abrupt, radical change would result in a lot of frustrations and anger. We have seen the so-called reform agenda in many of the countries in Europe. It's a disaster. You assume that the elites have all the answers without even interacting with the masses. And I think this is the flaw, basic flaw of the so-called elitist democratic ideals. Now, what we have done is firstly the issue of transparency, the issue of strong call for anti-corruption measures. All procurements must be through proper, transparent tender exercise, which did not happen. That's why corruption became endemic, and we lost billions in the process. But have we not taken measures? No, we did. The fact, Haslinda, that we focus on proper tender process, they save billions. And this is a major shift from the old corrupt policies. Secondly, we have undertaken, for example, electricity. The cutting of subsidy for electricity to the rich and to industries, but not affecting the 85% of the population. I don't think we should burden the issue of the governance is to make sure that it is transparent, it is just, but it should not punish the poor. Did we do it? Yes. How much did we gain? 4 billion ringgit. Now, we subsidize even for chicken. We withdrew the subsidy. How much did we save? 1 billion. Give us a break, Haslinda. Don't force us to make all these measures in 1 year.
So when it comes to the cut in fuel subsidies, can we expect that in June? Some say perhaps by year end. Can you give a time frame?
We acknowledge diesel and oil. Our prices is the cheapest. I mean, Malaysian price is cheaper than even Saudi Arabia. So I concede things need to be done, but it has to be done judiciously, because in no way will I punish the masses. You see, inflation can be a problem. What can be the priority? The priority is to stop the wastage and the leakages. If we can reduce the leakages and stop the wastage.
Can you commit, though, when those cuts
No.
will be happening?
What is the priority? Do we need the funds? Yes. How do we need the funds? Cut the excesses, the waste, stop the corruption. We can save billions in the process. Do that first, and we did that precisely in the first year. Now we move on to electricity, we move on to chicken subsidy, and now we have to consider about diesel. Because of too many leakages, billions are lost. But how do we then proceed to undertake this reform or cutting subsidy without punishing the poor? That, to my mind, is very central. We'll do it, of course.
This year?
At the right time, when we are fully prepared.
Still no commitment to the cutting subsidies?
No. Because I think, how do we do it? Any subsidy rationalization without costing further hardship to the poor. I've struggled all my life in prison because of my position to defend the rights of the masses. I don't want this because we have inherited such debt and endemic corruption and then punish the poor. So elites and the liberal forces must understand Do we need to cut subsidies? Yes. Which sort of subsidies? Electricity subsidies, as I mentioned, benefiting the very rich. You have a Rolls Royce, you get subsidy. But you're using simple, cheap motorcycles. Where do you cut subsidies for them? So it's how we implement it judiciously without punishing the poor. Yes, we'll do it in our time. I've been finance minister for a long time. You always have this, keep this secret to the last.
Prime Minister, we talked about how you've brought stability to the government, but there are tensions brewing. Some members in your coalition have asked for Anuar Ibrahim, Najib Razak, the former Prime Minister, to be released and to be under house arrest. Are you for it? Is your government for it? Because suddenly your deputy is for it.
What tension you're talking about? We just won the last few days. I just mentioned to the Highness Amir, we won the very important by-elections. Increase the Muslim vote, the Chinese Buddhist vote, the Indian Hindu votes. That's fantastic in a by-election. And our candidate happens to be a Chinese Buddhist or Christian. And the opposition candidate is a Muslim. And the seat is about 50% Muslim. And we won comfortably. Which means, again, do not underestimate the wisdom of the masses. You see, in a multiracial country, the majority are Muslims, they are represented, but we need to make sure that the non-Muslims, the Hindus, the Christians, the Buddhists are also represented in the representative policy position in the government. Now, case of Najib, there's due process. He's been in prison. I gave all possible facilities so that he's being treated fairly, at least comfortable, because although prison is not bed of roses, I am on authority on the subject. But there is, of course, his right to appeal for pardon from the king. And I have advised the king that you must consider as a process as is the case of any other Malaysian citizen who appeal to the king. Now, the decision is, of course, to reduce the sole discretion of the king. Whether he should be given house arrest, our position is, at present, you go through the process and let the king decide. But I'm not calling
What's
for...
What's your perspective? Are you comfortable with the idea?
No, there's ongoing process still. There's ongoing trial on the YMDB case. I think let the process continue. If the king is supposed to ask for my advice, I would say, Your Highness, go to the process. But the Constitution provides for the king to finally decide. And I think as Prime Minister, I shouldn't supersede the king.
Prime Minister, it's been clear that you've been clamping down on corruption. In fact, former Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad, the founder of modern Malaysia, is under investigation. What do you suspect him of having committed?
Well, let the authorities, Anti-Corruption Commission, which is grossly independent, proceed with their case.
He has not been charged?
No, he has not been charged.
So,
and the investigations initial, there were investigations of his children, which amassed, abundant wealth, and I think they have to explain. And I think they have been extremely kind in the sense of extending time for them to submit their reports.
Some say that your government chooses who to prosecute and who to exonerate when it comes to corruption. Your response?
We see the country has been used to a system which is semi-authoritarian or somewhat dictatorial. So they assume that under Anuar, I have to do the same. I don't. The Anti-Corruption Commission is independent. So is the judiciary, which is widely regarded now under the lady Chief Judge, fiercely independent. I have not once mentioned to her about any case. Of course, I did inquire what's happening, what is required, because she was keen in setting up an academy for training for judges. but not beyond that. So for the Anti-Corruption Commission to proceed, and in my members of the cabinet, some of them here, is clear on the fact that I mentioned on various occasions that please make sure that this government effect real reform, and you amass wealth and deemed to be corrupt, I'm not here to defend. And all the coalition partners have agreed. Let us move on from there.
Are there a lot more people who are likely to be investigated?
Well, I think the Anti-Corruption Commission has been extremely active and aggressive, and I think they're doing a good job.
So more people to be investigated.
You see, what have we done? At the political leadership level, it was very clear. Everything has got to be transparent, and tender process must be observed. But of course, since the system has been endemic, you have sometimes reports about immigration or customs happening, and they know that they'll be charged.
Prime Minister, I want to touch on the Middle East. You held a special meeting to talk about tensions in the Middle East, and while in Qatar, you met with the delegation, the Hamas delegation. Give us a sense of why that was necessary, and also, might the vocal support for Hamas hurt relations with the US?
Now, I learned the experience with the Qataris. They maneuver well. And I think we can. Because why did I meet Khalid Mash'al and Ismail Hania? Is to understand from them the latest development, other than, of course, with the Qatari leaders. And express my sympathies, particularly with the assassination of the children and grandchildren, and ask from their point of view what's happening. What they did relate. Well, where's my position? I respect the initiative by the Qataris, by the Arab League, by the OIC, by the international community. There must be preparedness to secure peace. There must be a preparedness to observe and respect the decision or recommendations of your neighbors. And they seem to concede with this. But what is their strong request? To stop the continued aggression, atrocities against children, women, and the continued bombardment of Gaza. And that includes the settlements. It's illegal occupation. You are talking about colonization. What was discussed in Ukraine is about colonization. Is robbing, is dispossession of other lands. That's all. And for that, I'm sympathetic to them. You don't tell me that who I should meet or who I should not. Now, if the question is with the United States, we maintain excellent relations with the United States. Cumulatively, the United States is number one in terms of
the relations
investments.
have not been impacted by your position.
I make it very clear. We are very strong in our relations with China. I do not subscribe to this xenophobia. We have been traditional allies, and most of our investments still from the United States is still coming. I mean, Germany, of course, new investor, the Middle East, Qatar, but from the United States, Microsoft, Google, Nvidia, all there, and coming in an aggressive manner in Malaysia, and we welcome them. You know, Malaysia becomes now the hub for semiconductor in the region. There must be reasons, and part of it is because of the support of the United States. We do differ in some of their policies, what they consider the contradictions, hypocrisy, but overall, they are still friends.
The thing is, Washington has expressed concerns about the flow of money from Southeast Asia to Hamas and other similar organizations. Are you seeing that happening?
Well, not one shred of evidence they adduced. There was ship-to-ship transshipment in the international waters, and we do not have the capacity to observe or monitor that. I maintain good relations with Hamas on the political wing. I have no involvement, no discussion with the military apparatus. And that's been very clear, and I think the United States do recognize that. They have, of course, every right to demand or request for explanation, and we do it to a friend who is curious to know what's happening.
What role do you see Malaysia playing in Gaza post-war?
We are a small country, relatively struggling to survive as an emerging economy. That's why I maintain excellent relations with Qatar and Saudi Arabia, UAE, Turkey, and get their sense what needs to be done. Of course, it's our duty then to do whatever is necessary, given the limited whatever capacity that we have, but we will. And I think for Malaysia in a distant land, we do subscribe to the thinking and the views of most of the Arab neighbors. That's why even the OIC, normally we do consult them first to get their understanding, then we support the position.
Prime Minister, we're running out of time. It's always too short when we have a conversation together. Just one final question. I mean, global leaders nowadays are grappling with a lot of challenges and uncertainties. What's the biggest challenge for you?
Well, I think insanity. Because sometimes you have policies that is totally absurd. I think what we need to do, right, other than focusing on the economy and development, is to bring back some humanity, compassion, and human dignity. That, to my mind, is quite lacking. That's why in the Madani framework, I put the economic policy something about sustainability, but I do consider the issue of values and compassion. For Malaysia, it's very important because we come from a multiracial country. You realize that if you allow this sort of religious bigots and racism, fascism to dictate, they will destroy the entire fabric of our society. So if you see the greatest challenge is because challenge of insanity.
Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, we thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.